Hey loves, it's Britt, and in this video I'm talking about Venus square Jupiter in Synastry. So I think I've talked about all of the other Venus Jupiter aspects in my videos, but I've missed this one, and probably because it is my least favorite. It does seem to work out the least favorably of all of the Venus Jupiter aspects that are usually quite lovely. But it's definitely not that bad to deal with either. But it's just the square tends to produce the most uncomfortable form of this. And yeah, it is an aspect of tension and differences and needing to adjust to each other, which sometimes with the square we don't really want to do. So it does show that at the beginning of a relationship or whatever kind of relationship, there is a very warm energy and a lot of openness to each other, a lot of openness to share our heart. Especially the Venus person can feel very drawn to the Jupiter person and see them as like this bright light or this like um positive influence, and they really feel like they're this like positive person or this wise teacher, and they can feel really drawn to them, and they want to share their heart with them. They can feel romantically attracted to them. But what they can find over time is that the Jupiter person is responding to them in a more mental or like philosophical way, and like they can still be very generous, and they can still like this can still be like the other Venus Jupiter aspects, and at the beginning it can seem actually even more so than even like the trine. Like there's a lot of givingness, there's a lot of generosity going on both parts here. But the Venus person in this aspect alone does tend to feel like the Jupiter person over time is like, "Hey, you're not sensitive enough to my feelings, or you're not around enough, or you're focused on all of these ideas or concepts," or like it could a really good example would be like the Jupiter person is like a, let's say they're like a motivational coach or something, and the Venus person is sharing their heart to Jupiter and their feelings, and they're like, Venus is a very, I mean, it's not as sensitive as Moon, but it is a sensitive part of us. It is our heart, it is our love, right? And we're sharing like, "Oh, I love you, Jupiter," and like Jupiter turns it into like a lesson or like a something like a concept, or and like it is kind of like Jupiter in this square, they like impersonalize Venus's feelings in a way, or at least that's what Venus can feel like. Or we can see with this one that there are differences in beliefs, differences in how we handle money. The Venus person could feel like the Jupiter person is maybe too spendy or too extravagant or too far fetched. They're planning for things that Venus doesn't think are going to actually happen or are even practical. So with Jupiter squares, there can be a lot of big plans. And with this square specifically, it's like we can have all of these big romantic plans, but we almost know, or we have this vague knowing that like this will never happen. These things will not come to fruition. And that's kind of the problem with Jupiter squares, is like we overpromise. And with this aspect, it's like we overpromise sometimes even a love relationship. Like we have this expectation, especially Venus can have this expectation that this is going to be a love relationship or something that's going to bring them pleasure and joy, and then either it doesn't ever happen, or if it does happen, it doesn't end up giving the Venus person that pleasure or that feeling of love, because the way that the Jupiter person is expressing their love to Venus, it's not as personal, like I said. So if you have other aspects that are more favorable, like, other trines to Venus or conjunctions to Venus, then this can be a very minor thing. This isn't really like besides the overpromising and the sometimes hurt heart of Venus, Jupiter really does mean well for Venus. It's not that Jupiter has this intention that like they're gonna overpromise or they're gonna not follow through or they're, gonna make Venus feel not important. They don't really intend that. So if there's other good things going on and there's love here, this can just be a more minor thing, and it actually can show a lot of extravagant giving. The Venus person wants to give to the Jupiter person, the Jupiter person wants to give to the Venus person. They sometimes, yeah, they give in ways that aren't maybe compatible with each other's ideas of what giving is or what love is, but it's still a very giving, very generous contact, even more so than the easier aspects with this one. We can see a lot of giving and a very open energy towards each other, even though we have our disagreements and we maybe don't believe the same things, and maybe Venus thinks Jupiter is impractical. It's not going to stop them from interacting. It's not going to push the people away from each other. There can be plans that don't follow through, but it's not going to stop a relationship. And if there's other Saturn contacts to kind of ground this can just show there's a buzz, there's an excitement, there's a sharing of our hearts, even if we do this in a different way. And this can be one of those relationships that has like, it's a very light-hearted aspect to have, actually. It's like we do want to interact. There is like that same bubbly energy of the Venus Jupiter aspects. It just sometimes this one, it does have those tricky things that I've mentioned, but it definitely can be a more minor thing. And well, like I've said in my other videos, squares to Jupiter, I feel like are probably the easiest squares to handle, but there can be bad advice given, there can be flakiness, there can be unreliability or over promising with these aspects. This aspect has the most financial connotation. So, we could have someone, let's say Venus or even Jupiter, is like buying expensive, lavish gifts for the other, and then in turn the relationship doesn't work out or something. But it's still with the square with Jupiter. It's kind of like no hard feelings. Okay, well, that didn't work out, whatever. So, I mean, it could show losses, it could show financially that something is out of sync here, but with Jupiter, even in a square, we tend to be pretty forgiving. And yeah, we kind of just dust ourselves off like, okay, well, that, like, and with Venus Jupiter, we know that the person didn't mean it, you know? So, one sort of like example of how this square could play out is the Venus person wanting love and like closeness with the Jupiter person, or wanting like monogamy, and the Jupiter person wants an open relationship or something like that. And it can still work, but there's a conflict there, right? There's a difference in what the Venus person wants and what the Jupiter person wants. So that's just like, I mean, that's not going to happen 100% of the time, but it's just an example of what could happen. But anyways, I'd love to know your experience of this aspect if you've had it in Synastry. What was it like for you? Was it more minor or was it a more annoying square? I'd love to know. And thank you so much for your requests, you guys. Keep them coming in the comments and we'll talk soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.